This NFL Week 6 Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has just added Pick'em Scorchers where you can win 100x your money. That's right, turn $5 into $500 in one game. Plus, every Sunday they're giving away $100,000. Choose promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $500. We're also brought to you by Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with code SGP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code SGP. And we're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com using promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. And we're giving away $3,000 in our NFL Second Chance Survivor contest presented by Corey Pinkston and Barking Dog Properties. Free to enter. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Friday, October the 13th, currently 1:08 on the East Coast. Here to get into our NFL Week 6 player props for the Sunday games. We'll recap what we saw on Thursday Night Football very, very briefly. And we'll, like I mentioned, get into our player props for Week 6 and throw out our touchdown scorer props as well. But joining me, I got my guys here with me, the hardest working gentleman in the sports betting industry. First, I got my guy here with me, Rod Villagomez. Rod, how's it going, my friend?
Going great. I'm so glad we got that Thursday night game out of the way. Just from a sheer fan standpoint, that was about as Thursday night as you could get on this one. So happy to be moving on to Sunday and putting this one in the rear view.
Yeah, I think there's a growing consensus within football fans, or maybe majority of football fans, to probably just to scrap the entire Thursday Night Football game. I think we're all in agreement about that here, but I don't think they're going to be doing that. And a lot of, and again, it's not on national TV. It's on, it's just a dollar thing. But I don't want to get into the business side of what transpires on Thursday Night Football. But like I mentioned, I've got the also hardest working man in the sports betting industry, knee deep in NBA right now. Me and him cannot definitely not wait for the NBA season start. It's my man, Chris Cochran. Chris, how's it going, my friend?
What's up, Rod? What's up, Munaf? Excited to be back on the show, man. I think the easiest way to describe my level of excitement is just going back to what Rod said. Thank God that Thursday Night Football game is over. that was putrid. My eyes almost started to bleed, but I'm excited for the rest of the game. So excited to be here and do the show with you guys. Hopefully we can stay hot and give out some more winners, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, not really much to talk about. I mean, I told you guys offline, I probably watched maybe 5 minutes of the game last night. I saw the score at half. It was 13-0 in favor of the Chiefs. I was like, I'm not even sure are the Denver Broncos even going to score 2 touchdowns, let alone 1 touchdown in the second half. They did score 1, made things, I guess, slightly interesting. But at the end of the day, we know Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense knows how to close the door when they have the ball, because if you're expecting to go 3 and out in a situation against the Chiefs and thinking you're going to get the ball back, you might want to rethink your plans, because more times than not, you are not going to get the football back against that Kansas City Chiefs offense. They did get the ball back, I will say that, for Denver, but it turned into a 2-possession game, and then lo and behold, for a second consecutive week, the game ends on a fumble for the Denver Broncos. So not much to add there. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts you want to add, but I think one question we may have to discuss here, and I think we'll probably talk about this more throughout the season, is do we see Russell Wilson in a Denver Broncos uniform next season as a quarterback for this team here, Rod?
How can you at this point? You've given him all the rope you can give him. You've given him, decent enough pass catching opportunities. You've given him a good running back now. And what more can he show you at this point? And I know that he's not necessarily the oldest quarterback in the bunch, but it's not getting any younger. And those beats and those bangs that he's taking right now are going to take their toll on him. And I mean, if you're Denver, you tip your cap and say, okay, well, we gave you a chance, and it's not panning out. Now, if he turns it on the rest of the season and all of a sudden plays out of his ass, then sure. But at this point, if it continues the way it's continuing now, I don't know that any team can touch him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, what just from a pure draft compensation, what the Denver Broncos gave up, not only to bring in Russell Wilson, but also their head coach Sean Payton. But I don't know what's going on with with Russell Wilson. And I mean, throwing the Denver Broncos there as well, it just has not been very pretty. I mean, when we talked about this team, that they were a quarterback away because of the offensive weapons that they did have between Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I know they've dealt with Tim Patrick being injured, KJ Hamler being injured as well, but I don't know if there's something that's going on in the locker room or whatever the case might be. I'm sure the story will come out eventually, but it's just not very pretty right now if you are a Denver Broncos fan. Chris, anything to add about Russell Wilson's future in Denver or just his Denver team overall? I know we talked about volumes on Thursday, but I mean, after last night, you're just shaking your head.
Yeah, nothing more to add. I think Rod hit the nail on the head. I mean, like, what else could you give him? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, so you're not gonna have like everything at the same time.
Yeah.
Now you have a more competent head coach in Sean Payton. Last year you had a better defense, but I mean, you got to take some onus yourself eventually, and kind of look in the mirror. And I think that it may be that time, man. I like Russ. Overall, he's had a really good career. We know what he did in Seattle, but yeah, it's probably time to hang him up. It feels like, and I'm not sure how long this marriage lasts because at this point, you just brought in Sean Payton, so you're probably not going to get rid of him. Yeah, you probably just change the quarterback. So yeah, that's all I had.
Yeah, I think that if not this year, maybe next year, maybe the last year for Russell Wilson, and maybe he makes the transition over to the booth like Tony Romo did. But I think he would be good in that spot. But I mean, there might be just something that we don't know about going on with Russell Wilson, and maybe just within that Denver Broncos organization. It's all hearsay right now, but just not, at least from a football perspective right now, what we're seeing on the field, just not very good right now for the Denver Broncos, especially defensively. All right, gentlemen, before we get into our NFL Week 6 player props, let me tell everyone about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. And Underdog has just introduced Scorchers. Go 5 for 5 and pick 'em Scorchers and enjoy a spicy 100x payout. And for a limited time, Underdog is sending their first deposit bonus of up to $500. So if you haven't already signed up for Underdog Fantasy, you're missing out because, again, like I said, that limited time offer is going to expire. Instead of a $100 bonus on your first deposit, they're giving you up to $500 in bonus. Plus, 100,000 Sundays continue on Underdog Fantasy. 10 lucky players will win $10,000 each. So watch along, make your picks, and maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. And when you sign up, like I mentioned, with using promo code SGPN, that's when you get that your bonus of up to $500 on that first deposit. Again, that's Underdog Fantasy using promo code SGPN. And stay tuned till the end of the episode here. We'll put together a Underdog entry for NFL Week 6. And we're also brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped has taken a step up from Halloween to bring your face the cleanest shave it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped all-new Handyman is the best way to get rid of that stubble. Featuring a compact design and next-gen skin-safe technology, the Handyman was designed to give you that smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shave. Get the sweetest treat this Halloween by going to manscaped.com and using promo code SGP for 20% off plus free shipping. It may be spooky season, but you don't want to scare people away with a scraggly beard. Give them something to look at with Manscaped Handyman. If you're tired of using a bad razor, making your neckline look like a scary movie, with Handyman's skin-safe technology to help reduce nicks and cuts, you can finally feel confident when going for that close shave. Whether it's wet or dry use, feel free to bring this anywhere and everywhere. The compact design and airplane's friendliness makes this the best travel tool for on the go, and being able to shave up to 3 days growth without the mess of a wet shave is priceless. And for my wolfmen like myself with a little more scruff, Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit has everything you need. This cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you your hair 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So you don't have to shuffle through and change out those clips. Nope, it's all in one. So to take advantage of this, To get 20% off and free shipping, make sure to use promo code SGP at manscaped.com. Again, that's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using that promo code SGP for a look as sweet as candy. Get yourself the handyman from Manscaped. All right, gentlemen, let's get into our NFL Week 6 player props for the Sunday games. Chris, why don't you lead us off, my friend?
Let's start at that quarterback position. I got a matchup that I absolutely love, and that is going to be Cincinnati Bengals playing against the Seattle Seahawks at home, coming off a pretty good game from Joe Burrow. And I'm looking right back at the guy. Looks like he may have found something. Pass attempts, 37.5. It's high. It's high for a reason. Passing yards, you actually can get this at 272.5, which is absolutely insane. Absolute bargain there. I do expect that number to increase, which is why if you listen to the show early, you can get some of these numbers before they increase on Sunday morning when you're making your last bets, right? So going through, whichever one you want to play, I'm probably going to play them both. Joe has 3 games this season of 40 passing attempts already, including last week against the Arizona Cardinals where he had 46 pass attempts. This offense has also, like I mentioned, it got clicking against that Cardinals defense. Joe had his best game of the season, throwing for 317 yards and 3 touchdowns. We know Jamar Chase thinks that he's always open. We know that, right? Yep. I think we should expect the same thing from the Seattle defense, from a tough Seattle rush defense. Seattle actually is only giving up 3.2 yards per carry on the ground, which is actually the best in the league. They've allowed just the 6th fewest rushing yards per game at just 87.5. And guess what? Joe Burrow's like, I don't care. I wasn't planning on using Mixon in this position anyway, right? Their pass defense, though, we absolutely can be taken advantage of. Teams are passing 62% of the times against of their plays versus this Seattle defense, which is the 8th most, and get nearly 7 yards per pop as well, which is bottom 10 for the Seattle defense. Also, most importantly, opponents are passing the ball 41 times per game against Seattle, which is the most in the league. You look at Cincinnati, they're passing 66% of the time, which is 3rd most in the league, 39.6 attempts per game, which we could round up to 40, which is the 4th most. The number is high, like I said, but it's high for a reason. Joe Burrow might throw the ball 45 times against this defense, and he might throw for 350 yards. So give me Joe Burrow in a spot where I think Mixon may struggle a little bit, but I like Joe Burrow. I can't decide which one I like more, the passing attempts or the yards. But the number being at 272 is absolutely insane. In a game where, at least he goes for 300 yards. And the passing attempts, 37.5, I think he finishes with at least 40.
Yeah, I mean, look, you mentioned it here. I'm not completely sold. I know that the Seahawks got a lot of reinforcements back in that secondary with, Witherspoon, who missed, I think he missed week 1, but he was back. Jamal Adams, I was dealing with the quad injury and then the concussion protocol. We saw the video and all that stuff. But I mean, you mentioned it there, Chris, that it may be that Joe Burrow found something. I know we've talked a lot about the calf injury and how that may have been affecting him, at least early on. But I think as the weeks kind of go by, maybe it's getting a little bit better at a time. Maybe not completely getting healthy, but again, a little bit at a time, right? And again, he's having to adjust the way that he's playing, dealing with that calf injury as well. And like you mentioned, Jamar Chase last week just absolutely went bananas against the Arizona Cardinals. But if you look for this Bengals team, this is a huge game this week because on deck they have the 49ers in San Francisco next week, and then the following week they welcome Buffalo Bills to town. So this is a must-win game for the Seattle Seahawks. So for the Cincinnati Bengals. And again, I think it starts and stops with Joe Burrow. So yeah, I can definitely get behind this here, Rod.
Feel like he woke up last week. I feel like now he's realizing that it's this youth, this the success that he had early on, it's not sustainable unless you can keep doing it. And I think he figured that out, and I know it's cliche to say, well, you can't have success if you don't have success, but if you have success early, sometimes you think it's always going to be there. And when you fall on hard times, you got to wake up to it. And I think he's finally waking up to it. So I think better days are ahead for Joe Burrow. I think he'll be okay. And especially in this spot too, it's very favorable for him.
Yep. 100%. All right, Rod, take us over to your first player prop. What do you got?
Speaking of quarterbacks, taking on my 49ers, PJ Walker suiting up for his team. I'll tell you right now, this is sad for I feel bad for PJ. He's going to get thrown into the fire
Right.
This is-
Did you bet his interceptions over 3.5?
No, is that what
Okay.
you were asking? Oh my God.
I thought you might have altered it.
Oh, no. Oh, I was might as well take his sacks up to 10 for Joey Bosa. That's insane. No, but listen, for PJ Walker, his touchdown total is set at 0.5. And I get it. I completely 100% understand that is like not even throwing a touchdown pass, but the dude only has but a handful of touchdowns in his entire career, let alone anything against the 49ers. He's played one time against the Niners, only attempted like 6 passes. But he doesn't have a touchdown pass against them. It's just for PJ, he's in a tough spot. He's in a spot against the 49ers defense that has only allowed one quarterback to throw more than one touchdown, right? Every quarterback except for Daniel Jones has thrown a touchdown against him. But I mean, that was Kenny Pickett in week 1, kind of get him by surprise there. Matthew Stafford in week 2, of course, you get that. Dobbs threw 2 against him. He was the only one. And then Dak Prescott. This is PJ Walker. I love the XFL. I love the Houston Roughnecks. I really do. 100% sold on him in the XFL. But as an NFL quarterback, he has been a backup 100,000%. And so I don't see that changing at all for him. Like I said, he's got 5 total touchdowns in his career. He threw 3 last season as a backup, but you expect this guy to come in against the toughest defense in the league at home. They're at home, I think.
Yeah. Cleveland's at home. Yeah.
Cleveland's at home. It's still going to be a rough go for them. So, I definitely think PJ Walker's not going to throw a touchdown pass because, listen, this Browns offense hasn't thrown very many touchdown passes anyways, let alone PJ Walker. So give me his under. This is actually a plus money, plus 102 over on Caesars.
Yeah, I mean, you also take a look at this game. It's going to be ugly weather as well. I think something similar that we see what we saw in week 1 between the Bengals and the Browns, obviously. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if I see a similar final score here, a 24-3 victory for the San Francisco 49ers in this game. But it's going to be tough sledding here for PJ Walker. I've been a fan of him, like you mentioned, in the XFL and the short stint that he's had in the NFL. But when you're going up against one of the better defenses, if not the best defense in the entire National Football League, points are definitely going to be at a premium in this game. Let's not get it twisted here. So, how does Brown score is it definitely going to be a mystery, at least scoring touchdowns here. But yeah, I think that, it's going to be a very, very long day for PJ Walker in this game against the San Francisco 49ers here, Chris.
Yeah, short and sweet. You said mystery, and they might not even score. So or it might just be field goals, and that's realistic against the San Francisco defense. And that's all I.
Yeah. All right. I'll get over to my first player prop here. Sticking to the quarterbacks here, I'm going to take a page out of Chris's book here, and this is why we do the Propcast here. Good to learn from each other. And Chris absolutely nailed Bryce Young last week with the completions. And I took the attempts on him last week as well. So I'm going to go back to Bryce Young here. Again, I'm giving a lot of the credit here to Chris, but they're going up against the Dolphins here. Double-digit underdogs in that game. And when we talk about game script, it's going to be something similar to, what we've seen the Panthers be in this season, right? So currently right now, Bryce Young, they did adjust his pass completions to up to 22.5. I know last week it was at 20.5. They're going up against the Dolphins this week. And again, the Panthers are going to be probably trailing by multiple possessions where you can't run the football at that point. You're going to have to throw the football. So over the last 2 weeks, Bryce Young has completed at least 25 passes in each of the last 2 games. And if you take a look at the 4 of the 5 quarterbacks that have faced the Miami Dolphins this season, 4 of those quarterbacks have gone over this projection of 22.5 completion. So it's simple game script here for me. I don't think the running game will be able to do a lot against this Miami Dolphins defense. Bryce Young, again, we saw last week that Daniel Jones, especially with that offensive line, wasn't able to do much, but I have a little bit of more faith in this Panthers offensive line to give Bryce Young some type of time. But I think that the completions are going to be there here for Bryce Young, where, again, he might be in that realm of throwing the ball 35 plus times for sure, getting that range of 40 again, I think. So I think for him, to get 23 completions here, I don't think is too far-fetched, especially in a game script where I'm expecting a lot of passing from the Panthers offense. So I'll take the over 22.5 completions here for Bryce Young here, Chris.
And I will most likely be right back there. I hadn't even checked this one out, but I'll probably be right there with the pass attempts over as well. 34.5, you mentioned he probably going to end up throwing the ball 35 times. And to me, it's just a repeat, right? It's rinse and repeat because they won't be able to run the ball. Also, kind of breaking news. I think it happened maybe 25 minutes before we started the show. It looks like Chuba Herbert's going to get a bulk of those carries because Miles Sanders is also ruled out. So when you talk about if getting thrown in the fire was a picture in the definition, you could just look at Bryce Young in this offense in his rookies here so far. So there's no way I can argue that,
Rod, thoughts on Bryce Young?
So his average throwing yards is 5.2 yards per attempt. So he's throwing it closer to the line of scrimmage. He's not trying to air it out deep. So that lends itself to being a better completion percentage because you're not trying the deep shot every 3 or 4 throws. So for that just means that he's going to throw a lot of short, safe passes, which means a lot of completions. So I like that.
All right, before we get into round 2 of our player props, SGPN's feeling a little bit generous. If you've already been kicked out of your survivor pool, well, here's your second chance to kind of redeem yourself after what's transpired over the first 5 weeks of the regular season. So, like I mentioned, if you've already been knocked out of your NFL survivor pool, don't worry. We here at SGPN, we've got you covered with the SGPN Second Chance Survivor presented by Corey Pinkston and Barking Dog Properties. It's $3,000 up for grabs. So winner takes all. It starts NFL Week 7, so not Week 6, but the following week. So there's plenty of time for you guys to get involved. It kicks off not this Sunday, not NFL Week 6, but NFL Week 7. All you got to do is go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. Again, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. And last but not least, we're brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets Revolutionary Parlay Optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with the Hall of Fame Bets to craft a more intelligent, data-driven parlay. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Again, start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, let's get into round 2 of our player props here. Rod, why don't you lead us off this time?
All right, I'm going to turn to the weekend, my Minnesota Vikings receiving core, and I'm going to take, I was almost going to say Miami Dolphins. They're not weak at all. Minnesota Vikings receiving core. I'm going to take KJ Osborne. His receiving yards are set low, so I'm going to bump them up. I'm going to bump them up, alt receiving yards to 60 or more. I like the number at plus 225 over on DK. Look, everybody on that team now in that wide receiving core gets a promotion, instant promotion with Justin Jefferson out, right? And if you look at it, Addison and Osborne, they're not that far apart in targets, right? I mean, it's like 26 to 29. It's not that far apart. Now, granted, it's Jefferson it's Addison with the decidedly more receiving yards than Osborne, but it's not really that far apart for them. So far, Osborne has 13 catches for 116 yards. He's averaging 33.2, which, I mean, honestly, let's be honest, 33.2 for a 4th on the list pass catcher, right? Because he was behind Jefferson, he was behind Addison, he was behind Hawkinson. So like he came in as the 4th guy on the totem pole as far as pass catching for 33.2. That's not too bad. So it's not gonna be that hard for him to get 60, I think, now that he's the number 2 wide receiver out there. And look, this Vikings offense, they're averaging 240 passing yards per game, which is pretty substantial, to a Chicago defense that's allowing 286 yards in the air per game. Second to last in the league. They're getting thrown on all over the place. So I would definitely think that 60 yards is in the grasp of KJ Osborne. And let's face it, Addison is still questionable, right? I mean, I haven't seen any update on him. Granted, I know he's probably going to play, but are they going to try to not use him up? right? Are they going to give Osborne a few more looks to just try to keep Addison from getting injured as well? You can't lose 2 wide receiver ones. So you got to take care of the guys you got. So I'm going to take KJ Osborne, 60 or more receiving yards, plus 225 on DraftKings.
Yeah, there was a way that I wanted to attack this game as well. Obviously, when you have a receiver, the caliber type of receiver that Justin Jefferson is, that that multiple guys are going to be able to feast in this game. I mean, if you just kind of look at the pure numbers of what Justin Jefferson was doing over the course of the first 4 weeks of the regular season before he did get hurt last week in NFL or in the week 5, plenty of guys are going to have that opportunity to eat. So I also looked at this game, and also I went with TJ Hawkinson, and I guess I kind of chose a safer guy here. But I feel like for TJ Hawkinson, like he's been the second most consistent guy as far as getting targets. I know there was one game against the Carolina Panthers where he only had 3 targets. He did have 2 receptions for 24 yards in that game. But outside of that, in the other 4 games there, guys, he's had at least 8 targets in those games. He's had at least 5 receptions in those 4 games as well. Receiving yards of 51, 78, 66, and 35. So I was contemplating on whether taking his receiving yards to go over at 54.5 for TJ Hawkinson, or just playing his receptions at over 5.5. And I think I came down on the side of the receptions here at 5.5, because we talk about Kirk Cousins. And again, if that deep shot is not there with Jordan Addison, is probably that guy. It's going to be a lot of checkdowns to guys like TJ Hawkinson. So at even money for TJ Hawkinson, for me at over 5.5 receptions, I took it that way. But again, everything that Rod mentioned there is that you go up against this Bears their pass defense. That's not very good. I know they've been pretty good against the tight end position, but it's just a void that Justin Jefferson leaves with the targets, the yardage, and the receptions. And I think that multiple guys are going to be able to feast in that. So you may see multiple guys like KJ Osborne, if Jordan Addison plays in this game as well, and TJ Hawkinson, that, they're going to be going over their projections here, which I do think this might be a higher scoring game than people think here. So I'll go with TJ Hawkinson over 5.5 receptions, even money currently over on DraftKings here, Chris.
Yeah, I couldn't talk either one of you guys off. I'm just sitting here listening to you guys give your analysis, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I might end up having to take both of those because TJ Hawkinson is the safer route, like you said, and we do expect him his target shares to go up, but also Ride at the +2. What was that, Ride? 245? Like, how can you not like put maybe even a smaller amount? Whatever your unit size is, you break it up just a tad bit, because let's not be too confused over how good the Chicago Bears defense is. It's not as good as what we saw last Thursday against my Commanders. It's not that great at all. So let's not get that too confused. But I think Kirk Cousins is bound to light this this defense up, even without the quote unquote best receiver in the NFL. So I like that you guys kind of split it up, and maybe I'll split my unit on both of you guys' plays until, because I enjoyed the analysis, and it makes all the sense in the world.
All right, Chris, take us over to your second player prop, man. What do you got?
So enough with the overs. It's time to go to some unders. And you guys know I like making my money there. Rachaad White this week. I know that this number is actually dropped. I capped this one yesterday. It was 50.5. I'll get an updated number here soon. But I'm going to under his 50.5 rushing yards. Twice out of 4 games, he's ran for 59 yards already this season, but once came against the Chicago defense that we just talked about. And he did have a good game against the Saints, which the Saints are one of the better run-stopping defenses as well. But I'm not too worried about it in this spot, because I'm just such a believer, I guess, in Dan Campbell and the Detroit defense, that I'm just targeting the opposing team's running back every single week and looking for their unders. You look at White. He's only averaging just 3.3 yards per carry on the season, 51.5 yards overall on the season. So this bet is for him not to get his average. And you look at Detroit's defense, they're not giving up. People aren't getting their averages against Detroit. Tampa also rushes the ball just 29 times per game. While they do rush the ball 29 times per game, which does rank 10th, they're only getting 3 yards per pop, which actually ranks dead last. And they're only rushing for 87 yards per game as well, which ranks 25th. So they're not running the ball well at all. You look at that Detroit defense that I've been cashing with throughout the entirety of the season so far. Their rush defense just continues to be stout. They're allowing just 3.3 yards per rush, which is third in the league. Just 20 rushes per game for the opponent, which is the third fewest, and just 68 yards per game overall on the ground, which is also the third fewest. So, if you're the Lions, I think you make Baker Mayfield beat you in with his arm and maybe with his legs, but they've just been making me too much money not to continue to back this defense, even on the road in a game that I kind of feel like it's a short line as well. I'm a believer in Dan Campbell and these Detroit Lions until they make me not to be. So give me Rachaad White under his 50.5 rushing yards. Like I said, I'll find an updated number because I think this one did change just a tad bit.
I do see a 45.5 at DraftKings. Maybe find a better number than that if you are playing the under. But I mean, yeah, it's something that you discussed last week, right? With Miles Sanders going up against Detroit Lions rush defense, who has been one of the better ones in the entire NFL this season. So I think for this rushing attack, it's probably going to be pretty much non-existent because of the case that, again, the numbers and the handicap that Chris just gave for Rachaad White and that Buccaneers offense. I think the one pivot that you might want to do if you want to look at an over for rushing yards is probably going to be Baker Mayfield, like you mentioned there, because he hasn't been afraid to run the football through the first four games of the regular season here. So, yeah, can't argue against that. Rod, any thoughts on Rachaad White to go under?
Boy, Tampa Bay sure wishes they had a running game. I mean, I know they probably miss Leonard Fournette. Well, no, they don't, but they miss somebody. They need somebody to run the ball in that offense. And I know Baker at some point is going to become Baker again, and this team's going to start to falter. So I'm waiting for it. And if it doesn't happen, then good on Baker, but I think it's going to happen.
All right, let's get into player prop number 3. Rod, lead us off.
All right, I've got a head-to-head here that I like, and this is a head-to-head rushing stat or a prop that you can find on DraftKings. They've got these head-to-head rushing stats. This is it's between Bijan Robinson and Travis Etienne. All right, I don't know how they picked these guys. I don't know how they put them together, but I like it. I'm going to take Bijan Robinson to win this head-to-head matchup by between 1 and 24 yards. This is at plus 300 over on DraftKings. My analysis is really just this, okay? I know Bijan has been hit or miss over the season, right? He had 56 yards in week 1, busted out for 124 in week 2, came back down to earth in week 3 for 33, then came back out, had a great game, 105 and 46, right? But it's not as if Travis Etienne has been a whole lot better. He's been more consistent, right? 77 yards in week 1. A dip to 40 in week 2, 88, 56, 136. So it's been a lot of back and forth between these guys. But I will say this, that he is going up against Travis Etienne is a Colts defense that just kept Derrick Henry to 43 yards. If you keep the best running back in this generation to 43 yards, good luck, Travis Etienne. I'm sorry, but you are probably not going to get yourself very many yards. Whereas Bijan Robinson is going up against a Commanders defense that just allowed Khalil Herbert to rush for 76 yards against them, and for the Bears as a whole to get 121 yards between their running backs against them. That is a very porous defense right now. They let the Bills get 128 combined rushing yards against them, right? James Cook had 98. Latavius Murray even had 15. The ghost of Latavius Murray had 15. So, and now granted, they kept DeAndre Swift about 56 yards, which was probably their one shining achievement. But this Washington Commanders run defense is not good. Whereas the Colts are better than what they're advertised, right? I mean, their only really misstep was giving 103 yards up to Kyron Williams, but then who hasn't at this point for them? So in the week 1, obviously Etienne had 77 yards against them, but this Colts defense has sort of stiffened up against the run since then. I don't think Travis Etienne is going to have that good of a day. And even if he does have a 77-yard day, I think Bijan Robinson's in for at least a 78-yard day, if not more, against this Commanders run defense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hand this over to Chris because he is the Commanders fan. I know we talked about a lot about Bijan Robinson already throughout the season, but yeah, I mean, the defense hasn't been very good. I also have a prop in this game as far as fading the Commanders defense here. But Chris, any thoughts on that?
I'll just let you guys continue to fade my Commanders and say I agree. You guys know I'm high on Bijan. I've talked about I cashed on his anytime touchdown last week. I think I've given out his prop a couple times. His receiving yards over because we know they don't throw the ball. They don't try to stretch the field at all. And that Commanders defense is just absolutely. We got a lot of work to do. That's all I'll add.
I guess I'll continue piling on the Commanders' bad defense, and I'm gonna go back.
We're that part of the segment.
Yeah, it's that time, Chris. I'm sorry, man. Get your tissue box out, brother. But I'm taking Desmond Ridder, longest completion over 34.5 yards there. So let's go back to week 1 where they faced the Cardinals. They gave up a long completion of 31 to Rondell Moore. Obviously, that didn't get over this number of 34.5. But since week 2, they've given up a long completion of 60, 50, 35, 59, 37, and 58. Last week, we saw what DJ Moore did on Thursday Night Football against this Commanders pass defense or lack thereof. And I know we've talked about Desmond Ridder a lot as well, right? Where he hasn't had a lot of success getting the yardage as far as his passing yards. Maybe they found something last week. Maybe it was just something that they were fading this secondary of the Houston Texans that, again, that's not very good right now. Still a work in progress. But they're also missing Derek Stingley Jr., their highly touted draft pick from 2 seasons ago, or 2 drafts ago, I should say. But the front seven has been good for this Washington Commanders team. The back half of it, not so good. So I'm expecting Desmond Ridder to maybe find either Bijan Robinson to break one out or Drake London. We saw him have a big completion last week. Maybe Kyle Pitts gets into the mix there as well. But I think at least one pass where the theme for 4 straight weeks has been that these quarterbacks have been able to have a long completion and kind of expose the secondary of the Washington Commanders. I'll stay on that train here, up 34.5. Longest completion for Desmond Ridder. Chris, you want to add anything else, man?
You know what? The funny thing is, as bad as this is to keep talking about how bad this defense is, I'll go back to Ridder. I hadn't looked at this, but he actually has a long completion of 32 and 33 yards in the last 2 weeks. And if you would have asked me what I thought it was, I would have told you 12 or 11 because that's how I think he throws the ball down the field, right? At least when I'm watching. So I love this number. You're literally asking him to go out there and do what he has done, maybe against the defense that's a lot worse. So I would absolutely be there right along with you, if I wasn't a Commander fan and didn't want to add quite another bet.
Just daggers going into Chris's heart right now. Chris, player prop number 3, my friend. What do we got?
So let's jump on a Swift D that's not Taylor. Let's go to DeAndre Swift. I like him. I like his rush attempts this week. Numbers 14.5. Minus, it's a little juice, minus 125 on BetMGM, but this is one I would play at 15.5 as well. And it's game script wise, right? I feel like I got the script for this game. You look at DeAndre Swift, he has at least 15 carries in 3 of the last 4 games, including 17 last week against the Rams defense in LA. The Eagles are rushing the ball more times than any other team in the league, 36 times per game. And like I said, it kind of just sets up for the perfect game script, especially against a poor defense in the New York Jets. The New York Jets have a really good defense, but it's not as good against the rush as it is against the pass. You look at the Jets defense, they actually rank bottom 7. I won't go through all the numbers, but it's bottom 7 in opponent rush play percentage, opponent rushing yards, opponent rushes per game, and opponent yards per game in totality as well. So it should be a big game, I think, for DeAndre Swift. I also like his rushing yards as well. I went a little more conservative with the attempts. He's not really splitting that backfield a lot either. But I do look for Philly to continue to be able to run the ball, establish it. Like I said, 36 times a game is a lot, leading the league. And Swift should get the bulk of those carries. So give me DeAndre Swift over his 14.5 rush attempts.
Yeah, I mean, look, Swift has pretty much made himself the featured back in that offense, right? I know they picked up Rashad Penny in the offseason, but he hasn't done anything He's done a penny, we can say, for that Eagles rushing attack. But yeah, I think that DeAndre Swift is now that guy. I think that he has that breakout game. I was it on I believe it was week 2 against the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken, where he had a huge game for the Eagles offense. And again, when we talk about this Eagles offense, a lot of times we think it's almost run first, right? Because just of the talent that they've had in the backfield. So I think, yeah, DeAndre Swift definitely has, emerged himself, I guess, or become the number 1 back for that Eagles rushing attack, I should say there. Rod, any thoughts on that?
I know Gainwell's supposed to be the thorn in his side, but he has not been the thorn in his side as much. And I think you're right. Yeah. This has now become DeAndre Swift's backfield. And even, their quarterback is not really digging into his totals as much as one would think. So yeah, I like the attempts for sure. And again, if they're going to be playing from ahead, then they're going to run the ball even more. So I like that.
All right, that is 3 player props each. Any more you guys want to give out? I mean, I had a handful that I liked this week, but Chris, any more that you want to give out here that you do like?
Yeah, just real quick, just since you offered, I got another under, and it's going to be Breece Hall, same game, opposite game script. When we look at defense, Eagles only giving up 50 plus rushing yards one time this season. That actually came last week to the Rams when they were in LA, but I think that they kind of hone back in. And they are going to make Mr. Wilson beat them and not be able to hand the ball off to Breece Hall. The Eagles they notoriously do that, where they take away what you like to do. They run the ball, you can't. You pass the ball, and they do a good job of stopping that as well. So I like Breece Hall. This number is 56.5 over on FanDuel, minus 114. He's coming off a pretty big game last week, but it was against Denver. He ran for 177 yards on 22 attempts. So with the number being all the way down to 56.5 after coming off almost 180 yards, you're like, oh yeah, it's a clear over. Not so fast. I think with that defense being so bad, with that Denver defense being so bad, he's in for a rude awakening if he thinks he's going to have any kind of success like that again. The Eagles defense is a lot better than the teams that they faced in the last couple of weeks. Like I said, holding opponents just to 18 carries per game, which is the second fewest, 61 rushing yards a game, which ranks number 1. They're actually better than Detroit. And the Jets are also rushing the ball the fifth fewest times per game at just 23 attempts. So I like Breece Hall to go under his 56.5 rushing yards as well. I think this one is going to be the numbers a tad bit conservative on the underside, So I think a lot of and Rob, but I think a lot of people probably thinking, well, he probably could get that. So I'm going to, stay off of that one. But if he finishes this game with 37 rushing yards, it would not surprise me at all. So give me Breece to go under his 56.5 rushing yards as well.
I think, you kind of go game by game with some of these player props. I think this is a sell high spot for Breece Hall, because we saw what he did last week against one of the worst rushing defenses against the Denver Broncos last week. And now you're going up against one of the best ones. So maybe the books, I think that they probably just put in something into their little computer models and just spit out a number and maybe make a slight adjustment. But sometimes that adjustment just isn't enough, right? Just because you laid out the numbers of how great the Philadelphia Eagles rush defense has been this season. I know the weakness for them, at least this season, has been that secondary where they've been dealing with injuries and things like that. But again, you're coming into this game, but also you look at a game script as well, that if the Eagles are able to get out to another multiple possession lead, that Zach Wilson and that offense is going to have to throw the football, which I don't think they'll have that much success. And again, I think this is a big flat spot for the Philadelphia Eagles this week after coming off the emotional high win last week against, the Denver Broncos, where we saw the chatter what happened in the offseason about Sean Payton and Nathaniel Hackett and all that good stuff. So, or bad stuff, whatever you want to call it in your mind. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you here. Rod, anything on Breece Hall?
This Jets offense still bad. It's just in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to get any better, I think, in this week, especially against a tough defense. So, I don't think anybody's going to get anything done against this team. Give me the under there too as well.
This tells you how bad this Denver Broncos defense is, because the Jets were able to put up 31 on them. I know they had a defensive touchdown at the end there, but again, we just kind of goes back to how bad Denver is. I'll mention one more here, and also isn't under when we talked about the Browns and the 49ers game. I'm looking at Amari Cooper to go under on his receiving yards here for this game. And again, we talk about number one, PJ Walker. I think his passing yards numbers at 166, if I'm not mistaken. But I just don't think, we talked about it, I'm not going to regurgitate everything that they're going to have a lot of success, whether it's rushing the football or throwing the football in this game. And then that number is at 41.5 for a reason. Weather is going to be a factor here. And when we talk about Amari Cooper, he's just a guy that does not excel when it's bad weather, whether it's raining, whether it's windy, whether it's cold, whatever the case might be. He needs that sun to be shining for him to rack up the yards there. And I kind of went back, and I should have wrote this down, but I went back and looked at some of the games where weather has been a factor for Amari Cooper. And I think if you go back to the week one, we saw that he wasn't able to have the greatest performance. I know it was week one, maybe Deshaun Watson, first game of the season, but I think the weather is really going to be a factor in this game. I just don't. Again, I'm agree with. I think Rod mentioned that mentioned with PJ Walker. I don't think that this Browns offense is going to have a lot of success this week. So I would take a look at plenty of unders in that game, whether it's for Browns players or just taking the full game under if you're again betting totals or anything like that. Rod, did you have anything else you want to throw out there before we get to touchdown props?
If you want to make a donation, this one's intriguing to me. This one's this one's on DraftKings. It's one of those fresh from the field ones. Tyreek Hill, 180 or more receiving yards. This is at 8-1. I mean, it almost feels, I know it's a trap, and I know it's one of those silly bets that you make that you're like, oh, okay, if it doesn't cash, whatever. But Tyreek Hill's cashed this bet a couple of times this season already. He cashed it last week against the Giants, and he's Tyreek Hill. Who's to say he can't do it again? This Panthers passing defense is not really the greatest in the world. They are giving up 128 average yards, but I mean, look, this is Tyreek Hill. I feel like any stats that you can throw against anybody doesn't count when it counts to Tyreek Hill, because this Miami offense has just been explosive, for lack of a better word. I mean, it really has. It's just been one of those eye-opening experiences as a football fan to watch this offense go at it the way they have been. And nobody's been slowing them down. It doesn't even matter which defense they're facing. Nobody's been slowing them down. So I feel like this could be a situation where Tyreek Hill goes off again for another second week. And if he goes off for 181 yards, then you're 8-1 richer than you were when you didn't. So, I mean, you don't have to go heavy on this one, but I think it's a fun sprinkle and a fun way for you to get involved a little more in that Tyreek Hill receiving game. You
could take Tyreek Hill 3 or 4 catches to get over this number, just because he's that type of dynamic wide receiver. I mean, we saw DJ Moore do it in 4 or 5 catches last week against the Commanders, but I know we're talking about the Panthers here. But I mean, he's just that type of player. Like, you get the ball to Tyreek Hill, there's nobody 5 yards within him to tackle him. He's taking it to the house. So, I mean, at 8-1, I mean, there's not much of an argument to be made there for that bet there. All right, guys, let's get into our touchdown scorer bets for this NFL Week 6. Rod, you want to lead off? Who do you think finds the end zone this week?
I think Raheem Mostert's going to find the end zone, and so do the books. So I think he's going to find it twice against this Panthers team. We're talking about this prolific Miami offense, right, and how well they've done so far this season. So if him to get in the end zone twice is at plus 325. So again, that's why I like it better, because his anytime is obviously definitely not a number you want to touch, because he's done it, right? They know he's going to get in the end zone because he's done it just about every single game that he's been in. He's only not scored in 1 game this season on the ground. He's had multiple touchdowns twice this season, 3 against Denver, 2 against New England. But what's more compelling to me is the fact that Tyler Algier found the end zone twice against this Panthers defense. Tony Jones found the end zone twice against this Panthers defense. Kenneth Walker found this end zone twice against the Panthers. And then now only 1 time each did Montgomery and Craig Reynolds get in the end zone against the Panthers, but there was still 2 touchdowns on the ground scored against the Panthers, against the Lions. It's been done. It's been done multiple times. And if you're telling me that Raheem Mostert is going to get a chance to score twice on this Panthers defense, I'll tell you absolutely. And at plus 325, you definitely take that.
Yeah, can't argue against that. I mean, he's like a minus 190 just for any time touchdown for 1 touchdown. So This kind of tell you where the books are thinking about at least him finding the end zone this week. Chris, touchdown scores this week, man. What do you got?
I got 2 that I really like. First one is is Kenneth Walker. I talked
I have
about
that
Joe
on my list
Burrow.
as well.
You got that? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. We know how bad Cincinnati rush defense is, and they're gonna have to be able to score the ball. Seattle, that is, and I think they'll be able to find success. If it's not anything that we can go through the numbers. Cincinnati allowing 5.3 yards per rush, which is the last in the league. Well, third worst in the league. 154 yards per game as well on the ground is what they're giving up, which is second worst. So I think Kenneth Walker should be able to find the end zone. I also like Brandon Ayuk. I think he might be a sleeper one, but I like Ayuk a lot this week just because the Cleveland defense is really good against the rush, and it's going to be a low-scoring game. And Purdy is looking Purdy, man. He just stands back there. He finds his guys. He goes through his progressions, and I think Ayuk might have had 3 or 4 catches on the first drive in that debacle of a game that was supposed to be set up as a 3-point spread against the Dallas Cowgirls last week, but that's another story for a different day. So I like Ayuk to be able to get in the end zone. Maybe they slow down CMC because it'll be the best rush defense that he faced so far. But Ayuk should be able to find the end zone. I think he does this week. So give me Kenneth Walker and Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, love it, man. I'm also on Kenneth Walker here again. I'm not going to regurgitate everything that Chris just mentioned, but it just makes too much sense not to play him. I was trying to find Alvin Kamara to find the end zone. Let me see if I can find it.
Real quickly, while you're looking at that, odds for that. So Kenneth Gainwell is plus 115, and Brandon Ayuk is actually plus 220. So I love that, especially in a low-scoring game. Somebody has to score the ball, and I do think it'll be for the 49ers and not either the Cleveland team. So give me those guys that I like the plus money you can get. Not the plus money that Rod always gets, but it's plus money.
Yeah, 100%. Alvin Kamara is a minus favorite, and it just kind of tells you why, because the Texans have allowed 72.3%, 72.73% of opposing rushing touchdown percentage. So that kind of tells you when it gets down to the end zone, guys are, I guess, say running backs of opposing teams are finding the end zone against the Houston Texans. They're ranked dead last. And to kind of put in perspective, the second worst team is at 60%, and which is the LA Rams. So there's a 12% difference between the Texans and the Rams, and between second and third, which is the Colts, it's only about a 1.67 difference. So that's telling you how bad this Texans rush defense is, especially in the red zone. And when we talk about Alvin Kamara, he's a guy that can obviously get it done running the ball out of the backfield, but also catching the football right? Because he's that type of running back for the Saints. But I'll take it a step further and take his 2 touchdowns. I mean, for him to find the end zone twice, you get that 5-1 currently over on FanDuel. And if you want to get really frisky with it, 3 touchdowns for him in this game, 31-1 in that game. I'm going to go back to the game that I think or at least I'm expecting to see points in between the Bears and the Vikings. I'm going to go, I like Dante Foreman. He's going to be the feature back this week for the Chicago Bears. Their top 2 guys are going to be out. This week we saw the news about Khalil Herbert. I think Roshan Johnson did not practice as of Thursday as well. So that kind of tells you that it's going to be the Dante Foreman show for the Chicago Bears backfield. And I think that he's going to seize this opportunity. So for him at plus 135 to find the end zone, I really do like that against the Minnesota Vikings and that rush defense. So Dante Foreman, anytime touchdown, plus 135. All right, guys, let's wrap it up strong here with our best bets before we get out of here. Rod, lead us off.
I'm going to go with KJ Osborne. I do think that the 60 yards is definitely well within his reach. I think this could be a 75, maybe an 80-yard game. Again, it's really only now down to Addison, Hawkinson, and him on this receiving core. So, and I know that Hawkinson's a tight end, but I think plus 225 for him to get 60 yards. That's pretty much a steal. Get it before the books adjust it.
All right, Chris, best bet.
Man, this one feels bad giving out a best bet today, because I feel like I'm overconfident, and that's never a good thing. I want to give out all of them as a best bet. But let's go, Joe. Let's go smoking Joe. Joe Burrow. Let's go with passing yards. 272.5. That number is 275 on some books. Just take the over. If he doesn't finish with 300 yards, it'll be a shame on him, given the situation that he's in this week. thoroughly expect him to finish with 325 to 350 passing yards in this game. So give me Joe passing yards over 272 and a half, or whatever number you can get it at.
Love it. All right, for my best bet, I am going to go with Desmond Ridder. Longest completion over 34 and a half yards. And, I read off the numbers of what the Commanders secondary has given up over the last 4 weeks as far as long completions. And I know, Chris also mentioned when we were talking about Desmond Ridder that over the last 2 weeks, he's had long completions of 32 and 34 yards. 32 and 33 yards. So maybe the playbook is opening up a little bit for Desmond Ridder. I think this is another opportunity going up against a team that, again, we talked about not very good in the secondary, the front seven, especially that defensive line, one of the best, if not the best, in the National Football League. But that secondary is really going to have to make significant improvements in the offseason. But at this juncture of the season, I think you got to continue fading him and expect Desmond Ridder and these quarterbacks to continue getting those long completions against those that secondary. So. Desmond Ridder, longest completion over 34 and a half passing yards as my best bet for NFL Week 6. All right, gentlemen, that is going to do it for NFL Week 6 player props and our touchdown scores. Rod, anything else we want to mention before we get out of here, my man?
I'm just excited for this week. And of course, you can follow me on X at RJ Villagomez. There's a link in the bio to everything I got going on, whether it's here, whether it's the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. F1's got a week off, but we'll be back again next week. My props on SBR are doing much better than my props for this. So maybe I need to rethink my process, but I went 2 for 3 last night, 4 for 6 overall on the night. So better over there. So follow me on X so you can get those ones as well. And then of course, if you're on Blue Sky, hit me there at RJ Villagomez as well.
Love it. Chris, anything else, my friend?
Nah, man, like Rod said, just excited for that we got Thursday out the way because we got some really good matchups and I think some really good games this week. So yeah, that's all I got, man. Definitely check out my work over on X at Crispy Cappin, 2 P's, 2 N's. Best of luck to everyone and all the action that they have this weekend.
Yep. Hopefully it's another profitable week for us here on the Propcast. We'll be back next Thursday night as usual to get our player props for Thursday Night Football. Hopefully, again, like we mentioned, we found some more winners this week on the Propcast for our player props. And hopefully, guys, that will find the end zone for us as well. So, again, like I mentioned, if you haven't already subscribed to the Propcast on your respective podcast players, whether that's Spotify, whether it's Apple, wherever you may listen to your podcast. If you haven't already subscribed also to the NFL Gambling Podcast for our YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. You'll see us live there usually or every week for Thursday Night Football player props and our Sunday player props as well. You can follow me on X. That's at SportsNerd824. Good luck this weekend. Let's break these books off and let it ride.